Now, speaking of conspiracy, since we're here, have you been hearing about this Boeing situation?
You sent this to me, and I didn't read it. And then I actually saw a Brett Cooper thumbnail. I didn't watch the video, but
okay, this is crazy.
Tell me about it.
Whistleblower for Boeing ends up deleting himself after calling and telling friends if anything happens to him. He did not delete himself.
Oof. And then something happens to him?
And then he gets deleted. Now, this Boeing thing is actually kind of scary. I'm not a big fan of traveling, but this makes me not want to travel more because there's doors flying off. There's things not being covered up. And so this dude who worked for Boeing for a number of years ends up blowing the whistle, and then this happens. Check this out.
I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way.
First, tonight, our investigative reporter Ann Emerson has new information in the death of Boeing whistleblower John Barnett. A close family friend of Barnett says he predicted he might wind up dead, that a story could surface that he killed himself. But he told her, don't believe it.
Tessa, Barnett's family friend Jennifer said they had talked about this exact scenario playing out, but his words seemed like a premonition. He told her, don't ever believe it.
I knew John because his mom and my mom are best friends. And so over the years, get-togethers, birthdays, celebrations, and, whatnot, we've all got together and talked, and that's how we really know each other.
And when Jennifer needed help one day, Barnett came by to see her. They talked about his upcoming depositions in Charleston. Jennifer knew he filed an extremely damaging complaint against Boeing. He says the aerospace giant retaliated against him when he blew the whistle on unsafe practices. For more than 30 years, Barnett was a quality manager. He'd recently retired and moved back to look after his mom in Louisiana.
He wasn't concerned about safety because I asked him, I said, aren't you scared? And he said, and his voice and the way he would talk, no, I ain't scared. He said, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide. I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way. He loved life too much. He loved his family too much. He loved his brothers too much to put them through what they're going through right now.
And he basically told you not to believe it.
Basically, yeah. Not true. Jeez. He's got too much to do, likes breathing. And he did. He had a lot of plans of things that he wanted to do.
What do you think happened?
I think somebody got in there and made, money can buy anything nowadays, it seems like. Jeez. And there's a lot of evil in this world. I think somebody didn't like what he had to say and wanted to shut him up and didn't want it to come back on anyone. So that's why they made it look like a suicide.
The last time she saw Barnett, it was at her father's funeral in late February. He was one of the pallbearers. Sometimes family and friends refer to him by his middle name, Mitch.
I think everybody is in disbelief and can't believe it. And I told everybody that I don't care what they say. I know that Mitch didn't do that.
And just because John Mitch Barnett is dead doesn't mean this case won't move forward. His attorneys say they're still prepared to go to trial in June. Working for you, Ann Emerson, News 4.
Okay, so this Boeing situation is crazy. Okay, let me give you guys some of the context behind this. And again, I'm spooked out by this because I got some traveling coming up. I'm going to be at the Exile Conference coming up here in a couple weeks in Boise, Idaho. I'm going to the East Coast. Okay, so they went in undercover and found these Boeing employees who said they wouldn't fly on the daggone planes they were working on. Okay, check this out.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion. Last week on Cold Fusion, we uploaded an episode on how Boeing cost of safety, and in the worst cases, it costs lives. Now, it seems like the chickens have finally come home to roost for Boeing. In just a week since the episode was published, a series of incidents have taken place that can only be described as alarming. From a wheel falling off a plane during takeoff, and dish soap being used in a production facility, to the death of a whistleblower.
What are we doing?
4 is not going well. In this episode, we'll see what's taken place since the last episode, look briefly into some of the claims made by John Barnett, and figure out what's next for Boeing. Just a note, I am traveling at the moment and using a different microphone with no soundproofing, so apologies in advance. First, on March 4th, passengers aboard a United Airlines flight from Texas to Florida on a Boeing 737-900 witnessed, quote, bright orange flames shooting out of the plane's engine. Passenger Elliot Trexler described hearing a loud noise while in the air, quote, there was a loud explosion. There was no question in any of our minds that something bad had happened. That combined with the plane nosediving and seeing flames. Then, on March 8th, a Boeing 737 MAX operated by United Airlines carrying 160 passengers and 6 crew members slid off the runway while landing due to a malfunction in the landing gear. In the very same week, a tire fell.
By the way, most issues with planes happen upon takeoff or landing, statistically speaking. They don't happen like when you're just on a 30-hour flight or 30-hour flight. It's kind of crazy. But like on a 10-hour flight across the Atlantic, it's usually upon takeoff or upon landing is when statistically speaking, this stuff's happening.
For Boeing 777, shortly after takeoff from San Francisco Airport, it detached while the plane was in midair and fell to the ground below, smashing into cars in a parking lot nearby. And just a few days ago, at least 50 people were injured due to a sudden plunge on a Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner. This was during a flight between Australia and New Zealand. A passenger on that flight described how a sudden drop caused people to be thrown up out of their seats, smashing into the roof of the plane. And this was with such force.
This is why you always keep your seatbelt on when you're on a plane. I know some of y'all get real comfortable, but keep your seatbelt on if you got to travel right now, you better keep that seatbelt on the entire flight, because you guys saw the situation on the Alaska flight where the door fell off. The only reason that person lived is because he had a seatbelt on. He could have been discharged out of the plane. And now they're talking about the plane coming down super hard. So if the plane loses altitude and you're not wearing a seatbelt, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to go into the ceiling, as happened on that flight.
That it broke panels and injured 50 passengers. Another Boeing 777-300, operated by United Airlines during a flight from Sydney to San Francisco, had to turn around mid-flight due to hydraulic liquid pouring out of the landing gear.
My gosh.
Before we all panic, we need to put things into perspective. Globally, there's over 100,000 flights per day, so statistically, air travel is pretty safe. But it's clear that these incidents seem to...
It seems like it's less safe than it was 10 years ago. But yes, statistically speaking, it's very unlikely something like this will happen to you. But I just keep my seatbelt on the entire flight now, guys.
...to be increasing in frequency. In all fairness, investigations into these incidents are all ongoing, and we may find that some of the fault lies with the operators, as opposed to being a Boeing issue. And while there may be some truth to that, there's one person who definitely didn't believe that.
One, this is not a 737 problem, it's a Boeing problem. And I know the FAA's gone in and they've done due diligence and inspections to assure that the door plugs of the 737 are installed properly and the fasteners are stored properly. But my concern is, what's the rest of the airplane? What's the rest of the condition of the airplane?
So this is the gentleman that blew the whistle and was allegedly deleted himself.
The reason my concern for that is, back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs. So it left the mechanics to buy off their own work.
That was John Barnett in an interview with TMZ about a month ago, and he was talking about the door plug situation with Alaska Airlines. John Barnett was a 62-year-old former Boeing employee turned whistleblower. He worked as the quality manager for over 30 years, and after his retirement in 2017, he's been publicly sounding the alarm and sharing his concerns about Boeing's practices. I say John was a 62-year-old man, because unfortunately, just as he was about to testify against Boeing the next day, John was found dead of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. His lawyers only found out because he was a no-show for the lawsuit and wasn't answering his phone.
This morning, police in Charleston, South Carolina tell NBC News they are aware of the death of a former Boeing employee turned whistleblower. 62-year-old John Barnett found dead on Friday from what the coroner calls an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
As of the making of this episode, police are still investigating his death. Barnett has appeared on Netflix, TMZ, and has worked with other journalists where he continuously claimed that Boeing's practices were not up to standard. For example, in 2019, Barnett spoke with the BBC and revealed that workers were constantly under pressure and have been, quote, deliberately fitting substandard parts to aircraft on the production line. He also...
That sounds like they're working at an Amazon warehouse or something, man. You can't be working on daggone planes and be forced to do crazy, unethical stuff. This is insane.
Claimed that there were serious problems with oxygen systems, the assembly process, failed tests, and overall mismanagement. He'd mentioned that it raised concerns with his managers, but no actions were taken. Barnett went on a long legal battle against Boeing. He alleged that Boeing destroyed his reputation and hampered his career due to the concerns he raised, but Boeing, of course, has denied all allegations. Barnett had worked at Boeing's South Carolina plant since 2010, where he was part of the manufacturing team on the 787 Dreamliners. In an interview with the New York Times in 2019, Barnett claimed, quote, "I haven't seen a plane out of Charleston yet that I'd put my name on saying it's safe and airworthy." These statements are in line with a 2014 report.
He said, "I haven't seen a plane yet that I would say is trustworthy and safe."
By Al Jazeera, which have been resurfacing lately. Secretly filmed footage shows Boeing engineers saying that they would not fly on the very planes that they were manufacturing.
This is crazy.
Did you fly on one?
No.
You won't fly on one. Did you fly on one of these planes? Did you fly on one of these? Did you fly on one of these?
Yeah, it's sketchy.
Sketchy.
I probably would, but I mean, I'm having death wish too.
Our source asked 15 of his co-workers if they'd fly on the Dreamliner. 10 said no.
That's horrifying. Horrifying. They got to figure this stuff out. But listen, this is a lot like the story of the whistleblower, or was it whistleblower, reporter whistleblower, that the CIA was allowing Colombian to flood the streets of Los Angeles that helped cause the crack epidemic of the late 80s, early 90s. You guys hear about that story? I am not exaggerating. He self-deleted himself as well by shooting himself in the face twice. Yeah, twice? Gary Webb, that's right. Gary Webb famously died of 2 gunshot wounds to the head. 2? They must think we're stupid. That's crazy. That's crazy. So I'm not like the lizard people, flat earther on these topics, but there are certain quote unquote conspiracies that are definitely real. And I mean, that's one that's like, Epstein, Gary Webb, this situation, like that's crazy. You guys can go down that rabbit hole if you want to sometime, but that's crazy. That's crazy. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And 2, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.